The second I materialized inside the horror game, the system designated an NPC as my boyfriend. From the sharp intakes of breath and muttered gasps from the other players who could see him, I gathered he must have been a terrifying sight. It was a good thing, then, that I was blind. I couldn't see a thing. Later that night, my new boyfriend's icy kisses started at the side of my neck, tracing a cold path downward. Slimy tentacles coiled around my arms and legs, pinning me in place until I was completely still. Tears started to form in my eyes, blurring a world I couldn't see anyway, as a single, disoriented thought echoed in my mind. Wait, was I absolutely sure this wasn't a dating simulator? It had all started the moment the invitation appeared. My stepsister, Serafina, who normally carried herself with an air of unshakable arrogance, had a complete and total meltdown. "I'm too young," she wailed, her voice cracking. "I don't want to go die in that stupid game." Her panic, I had to admit, was justified. This so-called horror game had manifested in our world 3 years ago, a grim lottery that no one wanted to win. Anyone whose name appeared on an invitation was forced to participate. Of the countless people who had been summoned, very few ever returned alive. My stepmother's cold gaze shifted, landing on me like a physical weight. Her voice was a venomous whisper. "Don't you worry, Serafina. We'll have your sister go for you." It was a known loophole. The invitations were transferable, but only if the recipient agreed to take the other's place. I pressed my lips into a thin, firm line. "I won't go." A cruel sneer twisted my stepmother's face. "If you dare refuse, I'll have Mr. Vance cut off your mother's medical payments." My stepsister's eyes lit up with malicious glee as she chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "You wouldn't want your mother to die because of you, would you, Ilara?" My hands balled into tight fists at my sides, my knuckles turning white with the strain. Just a little while ago, my mother had received a cancer diagnosis. My deadbeat father, feeling a fleeting pang of guilt for abandoning us after he married into wealth, had initially offered to cover her medical bills. But the cost this time had ballooned beyond what he was willing to spend, which was the entire reason I had come to the Vance household to plead for help in the first place. I knew my father's character all too well. Given a choice between me and his precious stepdaughter, he would choose Serafina without a moment's hesitation. I lowered my head, the fight draining out of me, and whispered the word that sealed my fate. "Fine, I'll go." In the next second, an invitation was thrust into my hand. It was deathly cold, like clutching a piece of ice that wouldn't melt. The gold foil letters embossed on its surface felt slightly raised against my fingertips, spelling out 5 words. Operation Blind Date. So that was the name of the game I was about to be thrown into. The instructions stated it would begin at the stroke of midnight. I sat on my bed in my small room, waiting in silence. Because I couldn't rely on my sight, my hearing had become exceptionally sharp over the years. I could clearly hear my father and his new family whispering conspiratorially in the hallway. "If Ilara actually makes it out of that horror game," my stepmother fretted, "you don't think she'll come after us, do you? The ones who survive get those game rewards. They become stronger than normal people." My stepsister scoffed dismissively. "What's there to be afraid of? She's blind. She'll be lucky to survive the first day. There's no way she's coming back." My father let out a heavy sigh. "I know I've wronged her, but I don't regret it. In my heart, you two are so much more important than she is." I couldn't hear the rest of their conversation as their voices faded down the hall. The clock struck midnight. In an instant, the familiar warmth of my bedroom vanished, replaced by the biting cold of an unfamiliar place. I was standing in front of a large, imposing mansion. A frigid wind howled around me, and from the roof, the bizarre, piercing cry of a black cat echoed through the night, filling the air with a palpable sense of dread. A mechanical electronic voice resonated directly in my mind. "Welcome, player, to the instance. Operation Blind Date. Clear condition. Achieve an affection score of 80% or higher with your blind date. Note: achieving 100% affection will grant an additional reward, mission rank, S-Class." Nearby, I heard a burly man cursing under his breath. How is this an S-Class mission? I thought the newbie levels were supposed to be easy. If I'd known, I never would have taken the $3 million my boss offered me to take his place in this game. So, he was a new player like me, here on someone else's invitation, though he had at least volunteered for a price. A girl's voice laughed, sharp and mocking. Everything has a price. Now you get to pay it. A third voice, calmer and more measured, mediated. All right, Maya, stop fighting with him. Let's get moving. I tapped my white cane on the gravel path, listening to the crunch of their footsteps as I followed them forward. From the jumble of steps, I could count 7 of us in total. I'd only taken a few steps toward the imposing mansion when I felt a predatory gaze slide over me. The big guy's sleazy voice sounded right next to my ear. Well, look at this, a little blind girl, even unluckier than me. You're a real looker, though. What a waste. Before I could react, a greasy hand landed on mine, and his foul, smoky breath washed over my neck. I paled, pulling back instinctively. Don't! He leaned in closer, his stench making me want to gag. Hey, little blind girl, stick with me. I'll protect you. The next second, I lifted my metal cane and swung it hard. A pained scream ripped through the air. The big guy, Brutus, clutched his leg, his face contorted in pain. How dare you hit me? I took another step back, my voice soft but firm. I told you not to touch me. His eyes widened with a hint of fear when he saw the cane held tightly in my hand. Whatever, I don't fight with girls. After that brief and violent incident, none of the other players, new or old, dared to bother me again. The game was filled with unknown dangers, and none of them wanted to get injured before they had even seen their first monster. One of the veteran players knocked on the mansion's massive front door. It creaked open to reveal an old butler, likely in his 70s or 80s. He was stooped over, and his voice was raspy and hoarse when he spoke. You must be here for the blind dates with the young masters and mistresses of the Blackwood family. Please, come in. They have been waiting for you. We followed the butler into the grand entrance hall of the mansion. The young masters and mistresses he mentioned were sitting on a long sofa not far away. Brutus, who had limped in behind us, started muttering under his breath. Are you kidding me? Every one of these people is ugly in their own special way. It hurts my eyes just to look at them. How are we supposed to romance them? The eldest Blackwood son must have had supernatural hearing because he heard Brutus's complaint and, with inhuman speed, teleported directly in front of him. His voice was chilling, each word deliberate and laced with menace. Who did you say was ugly? Brutus jumped then, feeling his machismo challenged, puffed out his chest. I was talking about you. It's not illegal to say someone's ugly, is it? The eldest son let out a wild, unhinged laugh. You said I'm ugly? How dare you say I'm ugly? The more he laughed, the wider his mouth stretched, until it split open all the way to his temples, revealing a horrifying set of double-rowed teeth. Brutus sensed the imminent danger and stumbled back a step, but it was too late. The eldest Blackwood son had already ripped his arm off in one clean, sickening bite. He was about to take another when a man in a suit from the Blackwood group stepped forward to stop him. Brother, I want this one. You know I have a thing for broken people. Brutus clutched his bleeding stump, his earlier bravado completely gone. When the man in the suit looked his way, he could only whisper, But you're a man. What's wrong with being a man? The suit-clad brother asked with a humorless smile. You have a problem with me? Having learned a painful lesson, Brutus wouldn't dare object. He quickly stammered, No, no, no. I love men. Real men, do it with other men. A girl nearby snickered quietly. To save his own skin, that guy would say anything. Witnessing this brutal exchange, the other players quickly scrambled to pick their own partners, choosing the Blackwood heirs who looked the most approachable or least likely to dismember them. Soon, only I and the last Blackwood, the third son, were left standing in the hall. The sound of expensive leather shoes on the polished wooden floor echoed with a rhythmic, heavy tread. The sound was so oppressive, it made my heart feel strangely tight in my chest. I sensed someone had stopped directly in front of me. One of the other players saw this and sighed softly, as if in mourning for my impending doom. Amid my own curiosity, I felt a wave of profound relief. Good thing I was blind. Will you be my blind date? The man's voice was as cold as ice, completely devoid of any human warmth. I had no other choice. I will, I said softly. A cool, dry kiss landed on the back of my hand. This third Blackwood son is quite the gentleman, I thought to myself. The very next second, however, something cold, wet, and slimy wrapped itself around my calf. I froze. What was that? My body reacted before my brain could process the sensation. My cane was already swinging through the air, striking whatever it was that had touched me. The new players didn't understand what had just happened, but the veterans were already looking at me with pity. Brutus had just called the eldest son ugly and lost an arm for it. I had actually hit one of them. I was probably going to lose my life. I thought the same thing. I scrambled backward, gripping my cane tightly, my ears straining to catch any sound from my surroundings. The thing on my leg quickly retracted, and an electronic tone sounded in my head. System notice, affection plus 10. I was stunned. I hit him. And his affection score went up? What kind of twisted logic was that? While I was still bewildered, the old butler reappeared, clapping his hands together slowly. It seems everyone has found a suitable partner. A very successful blind date indeed. He then addressed us players directly. I've had the chef prepare a sumptuous dinner for you. Please be sure to join the young masters and mistresses at 6 p.m. This dinner is very important. If you can please them, you will receive a rose. And you should know the mansion is very dangerous at night. A rose, the symbol of pure love, can protect you and grant you a peaceful night. The players exchanged wary glances. We all understood that this was a trap. After all, getting anything from an instance's NPCs sometimes required paying with your life. It wasn't even 6 p.m. yet, but all the players, myself included, had already gathered in the grand dining room. The servants were bringing out elaborate dishes one by one. Maya, the sharp-tongued girl from earlier, had a skill that could identify the contamination level of food. If you ate too much contaminated food, you'd lose your mind. And in a game like this, anyone who couldn't stay sane was as good as dead. Her tongue was sharp, but her heart was soft, and she quietly warned us as the plates were set down. The beef stew has fingers in it. Don't eat it. The shrimp is normal, it's safe. The spaghetti bolognese is tainted. Don't eat it. The seafood risotto is safe. After she finished her assessment, I noticed a pattern. Seafood was safe, but the meat dishes were all tainted. The clock struck 6, and our date sat down beside us. Thanks to Maya's warning, we all strategically avoided the contaminated food. However, the Blackwoods weren't going to let us off that easily. The second son, the one in the suit, placed a piece of beef on Brutus's plate, his voice sickeningly sweet. "Honey, this is my favorite beef. You have to try some." Brutus didn't dare eat it. He stammered, "It has cilantro in it. I don't like cilantro." "Honey, do you know what my biggest wish is?" Brutus instinctively asked, "What wish?" "For the whole world to be covered in cilantro," the second son said with a fake smile. "And I have another wish." This time he didn't beat around the bush. "And that is for everyone in the world who doesn't eat cilantro to just die." His voice was filled with a terrifying, killing intent. A shiver ran down Brutus's spine. I'll eat it, he said quickly. One by one, the other players were pressured by their dates. Some of the veterans used their skills to deal with the situation, but the new players had no choice but to grit their teeth and eat the contaminated food. One new player was so enthusiastic about eating it that he actually got a rose from his date. When Brutus found out, he was filled with regret. He had to eat it either way. If he'd known, he wouldn't have refused. He might have gotten a rose out of it. Of everyone at the table, I was the only one who hadn't been forced to eat anything by my date. But I could feel the intense gaze of the youngest Blackwood son, Silas, on me the entire time. It was so hot it felt like it could almost burn my skin, and I had no idea what he was planning. Afraid he would pressure me like the others, I made the first move and put a shrimp on his plate. Eat some shrimp. Affection plus 10. I blinked in surprise, then started eagerly feeding him more food. The subsequent affection points didn't come as easily as the first, but all told, I managed to rack up another 8 points. Sometimes people are like that. When they're miserable, they want others to be miserable too. Brutus couldn't stand seeing me get off so easily and spoke up. Young master, don't just eat. You should do something for your girlfriend too. You're right. Hearing that, Brutus gave me a malicious grin, probably thinking I was about to face some terrible fate. The next second, his smile vanished. A perfect red rose suddenly appeared in Silas's hand, and he offered it to me. Alara, you worked hard serving me food. This is for you. I took it and whispered a small, thank you. Silas stared at me, his dark eyes swirling like storm clouds. The rose was as red as blood, making my skin look as white as snow by comparison. But my lips were even redder than the rose, like a cherry hanging on a branch, where one gentle bite would release a burst of sweet juice. I want a taste. I felt something cold and soft press against my lips, then gently bite down. He was so close I could smell the faint, clean scent of cedarwood, a familiar scent that I felt I knew from somewhere. Sensing my flinch of pain, Silas licked the spot soothingly, his cool breath ghosted across my neck as he whispered hoarsely, "You're sweet." After that, he did nothing else. Everyone at the table was stunned. One player had to eat contaminated food just to get a rose, and I had gotten one so easily. Brutus, especially, looked like he was about to lose his mind. He had spoken up not to be helpful and get Silas to give me a rose, but to cause trouble for me. He wouldn't give up. "Young master, she's too thin. You should give her some meat. That bowl of beef stew looks pretty good." Silas's brow furrowed, his lips turning down in displeasure. "Are you telling me what to do?" Brutus flinched, feeling as if he'd been targeted by a venomous snake. He suddenly regretted it. Silas's kind attitude towards me had given him the false impression that he was an easygoing person. But who in these instances was ever a pushover? He hurriedly said, "No, of course not." It was too late. Silas looked at the man in the suit, his voice dripping with undisguised malice. "Second brother, your date likes beef stew. You should give him some more." The second son chuckled. "No problem." Brutus saw the fingers floating in the red broth and shook his head in horror. "No, I don't want to eat it." "Hmm." The man in the suit wasn't listening. He grabbed the bowl of stew and started shoving it into Brutus's mouth. I gained a new understanding of my date. He was fiercely protective. That was a good thing. As soon as I had the rose in my hand, I could feel 3 pairs of burning eyes on me. Those 3 players still hadn't gotten roses of their own. From any angle, robbing a blind girl of her rose seemed far less costly than trying to earn one from an NPC. But now things were different. As long as the other players had any sense, they wouldn't dare make a move on me. All I had to do was focus on dealing with the NPCs in the instance. After dinner, the butler, who had been gone for a while, reappeared. "It's getting late. Our guests should return to their rooms to rest. You have 3 more days to win the hearts of our young masters and mistresses. Good luck to you all." The players all looked grim. The instance was only giving us 3 days, far too little time. If we couldn't successfully romance our dates within those 3 days, death would be waiting for us. I went up to the second floor. A few seconds later, I heard a scream from a room not far away. "Ah, what is that? Don't bite my leg." The eldest Blackwood daughter's voice followed. "Darling, that's just my little pet. It doesn't like it when people enter a room without a rose." That was a new player. The monster kept by the eldest daughter had chewed off half his leg, and he was terrified. "What do I have to do for you to give me a rose?" The eldest daughter said ambiguously. "Let's talk about it inside." A veteran player shook his head. The NPCs in S-class instances always had a variety of ways to torture people. Who knew if that new player would make it out of that room alive tomorrow? As for the other veteran player who hadn't gotten a rose, he was more than capable of handling those monsters. Thanks to the rose Silas had given me at dinner, I made it into my room without any trouble. The room was eerily quiet with a thick, coppery smell of blood in the air. If I listened closely, I could hear a faint, sorrowful sigh. There was something else in this room besides me. It seemed to be lamenting the fact that I had a rose, which meant it couldn't harm me. I wasn't sure if being blind was a good or bad thing at this moment. On one hand, I wouldn't see anything gruesome, but the human imagination is a powerful thing, and sometimes what the mind conjures up is 1,000 times more terrifying than any real monster. I tried my best not to think about it, quickly washed up and lay on the bed to rest. Worried the rose might fall off, I tied it to my wrist with 2 hair ties. After a while, the thing in the room couldn't hold back any longer. It perched at the head of my bed, getting closer and closer, and then blew a stream of cold air onto my neck. Its breath was freezing, and goosebumps erupted all over my skin. My cane was beside the bed. I retreated to the far corner of the room and swung it blindly toward the creature. It let out a piercing shriek and didn't dare come any closer. It spoke, its voice innocent and childlike, which only made it feel deeply unsettling and strange. "Big sister, the rose on your wrist is so pretty. Can you give it to me?" "No." Its voice instantly became shrill and demanding. "Why not?" "Because," I said, lowering my gaze toward the floor, "the person I like gave it to me." System notice, affection +5. I blinked in confusion, wondering uncertainly, is Silas in this room too? No, that was impossible. When I came in, I only heard my own footsteps. My gaze flickered and my unfocused eyes instinctively turned toward the door. Was he standing right outside? The little monster's sharp voice cut through my thoughts. "But I want it. Sister, please give it to me. I'm begging you. I really, really want it." As time went on, its voice grew more and more piercing. My mind started to feel foggy, and I almost gave in to its demand. I bit down hard on my tongue. The sharp pain brought me back to my senses. I was just about to smack it with my cane when its voice abruptly stopped, as if someone had grabbed it by the throat. I heard the sound of something heavy being dragged across the floor. Then, the window opened and something was thrown out with a thud. Silas must have done it. I thought back to my first encounter with him, to that cold, soft thing that had wrapped around my leg. After that, the room was silent. A moment later, I heard footsteps moving away from the door. Silas was gone. I let out a small sigh of relief. It was 10 o'clock at night. The hallway outside was completely silent. I got out of bed and tiptoed toward the door. Before we went upstairs, the few of us who had gotten roses had made a verbal agreement. While the roses protected us for the night, we would meet at the top of the stairs at 10:05 p.m. to search for clues to clear the instance. This wasn't some simple dating sim. Trying to win over the NPCs with love alone was impossible. There had to be some other way to quickly max out the Blackwoods affection meters. "You actually came," Maya said, surprised to see me. There were 4 of us who had gotten roses. One was a new player who had earned his by eating the contaminated food. He was too scared to come. He'd said, "You guys go ahead. I have a rose, so I'm safe for tonight. I'm not going to risk my neck with you." That's why Maya was so surprised to see me. After all, I looked even more fragile than that new player. I said softly, "I don't want to leave my fate in someone else's hands." The horror game wouldn't go easy on me just because I was blind. I had to work harder than anyone else just to have a chance at survival. Maya nodded in approval. "That's a good attitude to have." An older player named Leo sneered. "Good for what? A blind girl tagging along to find clues is just going to slow us down." "Let me be clear. If we run into trouble, I'm not helping you." I bit my lip. "I understand." We headed to the study first. Leo had found out that before old Mr. Blackwood passed away, he had left behind a massive collection of jewelry worth hundreds of millions of dollars, hidden somewhere in the mansion. His children had yet to find it. That was why the Blackwood heirs, all adults, still lived in the family home. They were desperate to find this treasure. Leo speculated that if we could help the Blackwoods find their father's inheritance, their affection meters would quickly fill up and we could clear the instance. Old Mr. Blackwood's study was on the 3rd floor. It hadn't been entered in a long time, so it was covered in thick cobwebs and had a musty, decaying smell. The study was decorated in an old-fashioned style. Besides a wall-to-wall bookshelf, the most striking feature was an old grandfather clock in the corner, as tall as a person. In the silent room, the ticking of the second hand was sharp and clear, like a death knell filled with an ominous energy. We all instinctively kept our distance from the clock. Maya and Leo searched the desk and bookshelves, trying to find useful clues. Since I couldn't see, I used my cane to tap around the room, checking for any secret compartments. Leo saw this and frowned. Hey, you. Just stand still and don't move. If you break something and attract the Blackwoods, this whole trip will be for nothing. I whacked my cane hard against Leo's shin. He yelped in pain. What are you doing? I said coolly. My cane is very well behaved. It only hits what I want it to hit. Maya chuckled. Serves you right for underestimating her. Leo was about to lose it, but Maya stepped in. All right, Leo, cut it out. We're here to find clues, not to watch you bully a girl. As a veteran player, Leo knew how to prioritize. He just grumbled. Whatever, I won't stoop to her level. After that, Leo was much quieter. We all went back to searching for clues. Strange. There are no clues here at all. That can't be right. Leo had been searching for a long time and found nothing but a mouthful of dust. Maya was in the same boat. Could the clue be hidden in that clock? That was the last thing she wanted. Her veteran instincts told her that clock was hiding something terrifying. Come look at this, I said, tapping my cane on the floorboards under the desk. The sound it made was unusually hollow, as if there was empty space underneath. Maya heard it and immediately pulled out a dagger to pry up the floorboard. She said with a hint of excitement, There's something in here. It was a blood-red diary with a black cat drawn on the cover. Its eerie green eyes seemed to move, staring straight at Maya. The gaze was bloodthirsty and menacing. It was as if to say that anyone who read this diary would die from its curse. A shiver went down Maya's spine. She quickly opened the diary, deciding it was better not to look at the cover. Inside was old Mr. Blackwood's flamboyant signature. This was indeed his diary. Maya said, This place is creepy. Let's go back before we read it. Just as she finished speaking, a heavy bell began to toll in the room. We all jumped. It was the top of the hour and the old grandfather clock was chiming. But each chime was louder than the last, like a summons from the Grim Reaper. The next second, the bottom of the clock swung open and a big-headed ghost baby crawled out. In that instant, the room felt as cold as a freezer. Maya gasped. Oh no, it's a demonic doll. The diary must have been what the doll was guarding. By taking it, we've angered it. The demonic doll was fast, catching up to us in seconds. Maya yelled to me, Ilara, run! We'll handle this. Leo nodded. Yeah, we've got this. Okay, see you in the morning. I knew I would only be a burden if I stayed, so I immediately left. However, my danger was far from over. I had just reached the top of the stairs when someone rushed toward me. He was chanting frantically, Rose, give me the rose. It was Brutus's voice. He sounded completely unhinged. I remembered all the contaminated food he'd eaten today. It was obvious the contamination had gotten to him, and he'd lost his mind. The stairwell was narrow, and I had nowhere to retreat. He was too close for me to even swing my cane. A cold, sharp blade touched my skin. Brutus was trying to kill me. The more dangerous the situation, the calmer I became. I couldn't dodge the knife, so I stopped trying to. My fingers found the small button on my cane. There was a sharp blade hidden inside. It was my last resort. Just as I was about to press it, the blade suddenly moved away. And so did Brutus. It seemed like something had wrapped around him. He screamed in terror, Let me go! Let me go! The next second, I heard a heavy thud, followed by the sickening sound of cracking bones. Brutus's agonizing screams filled the air, one after another. He slowly regained his sanity. Don't kill me. Before he could finish his plea, his voice was cut off. A few seconds later, the second son's displeased voice rang out. Silas, that's my pet. He's my responsibility to discipline. If you kill him, what am I supposed to play with? Silas's lips curled into a sneer I could hear in his voice. I almost forgot about you. If you can't control your pet, then you can die too. What are you doing? No, we're allies. You can't. Ah! With another scream, the second son went silent, apparently dead as well. I sensed someone approaching. The familiar clean scent of cedarwood filled my nose. It was Silas. He said he wanted to treat the wound on my hand, so I followed him back to his room. I would have much preferred to go back to my own room and rest. I wasn't seriously injured. It was just a small cut on the back of my hand from the tip of the knife. It would have healed on its own in a little while. But my intuition told me it was best not to refuse Silas's kindness, especially since he had just killed a man and a monster. After we entered his room, Silas had me sit on the edge of his bed. For a long time, he didn't move. The room was so quiet, I could only hear the sound of our breathing. I couldn't help but speak up. Silas, didn't you say you were going to treat my wound? Silas finally spoke. Yes, I'm going to treat Ilara's wound. I didn't know that Silas had been staring at my wound the whole time. On my pale skin, the streak of red was startling, almost impossible to look away from. The bead of blood gave off a sweet scent, tempting one to have a taste. Gradually, his gaze grew dark and unreadable. Suddenly, I felt something wet and warm lick my wound. I looked down, my eyelashes fluttering. You, Silas said calmly, I'm treating your wound. So weird. Perhaps this was just how horror game NPCs treated injuries. But his breath, light as a feather on the back of my hand, and the deliberate way he was licking me, it was making me a little uncomfortable. I urged him gently, Well, can you hurry up? Silas looked up at me, his eyes locking onto mine. My own eyes, unfocused and innocent, stared back at him blankly. So obedient. His gaze darkened, and he said in a husky voice, Okay. At that moment, I was completely unaware of what was about to happen. It wasn't until he bit my lip that I realized something was wrong. Silas, It was too late. He pried my lips apart, his tongue pushing inside, licking and sucking, not missing a single inch. His movements were a bit clumsy but incredibly forceful. My body went stiff, and I placed my hands on his chest, about to struggle. Just then, the familiar electronic tone sounded in my head. System notice. Affection plus 10. My hands moved to grip the collar of his shirt, and I stopped resisting. Slender tentacles eagerly wrapped around my wrists, their warm, smooth surfaces licking every inch of my skin. A strange, unfamiliar sensation began to build inside me. Listening to the constant affection notifications in my head, I felt a little dazed. Was this really not a dating sim? Hiss. Sensing my distraction, Silas bit my neck punishingly. What happened next was both pleasurable and agonizing. I had never known a night could be so long. When I woke up, it was already noon. I was wearing clean clothes and was back in my own bed. If it weren't for my aching body and the affection score, which was now at a staggering 70, I might have thought yesterday was all just a dream. The familiar scent of winter cedarwood hung in the air. Silas, are you here? As soon as I spoke, I realized my voice was incredibly hoarse. The culprit was right beside me. He handed me a glass of water. Drink some water, it'll soothe your throat. The water helped. Silas then fed me a bowl of warm porridge, and my strength slowly returned. This is for you. Suddenly, a huge bouquet of flowers was placed in my hands. Are these roses? Silas nodded, then remembered I couldn't see and explained, I saw how much you seemed to like that rose yesterday. A small smile curved my lips, and I placed a kiss on his cheek. Thank you. I really love them. The tentacles in Silas's body seemed to dance with joy. I'm glad you like them. I went downstairs to meet up with Maya and Leo. Nina was thrilled to see me. You're alive. That's great. Leo and I were worried when you didn't show up this morning. We thought something had happened to you. I looked a little uncomfortable. I got held up by a few things. Thankfully, Maya didn't press for details. She quickly updated me on the situation in the house. Brutus and his date, the second son, were missing. The new player who had gotten a rose at dinner yesterday was found dead in his room. He had been disemboweled, blood pooling all over the floor, with splatters even on the ceiling. There was no sign of a rose in his room. I guessed that after eating so much contaminated food yesterday, his mind was gone. When the monster asked for his rose, he hadn't refused. Ironically, the new player who hadn't gotten a rose at dinner had survived. After being bitten by a monster when he entered his room last night, he made a deal with the eldest Blackwood daughter. He traded one of his arms for a rose. The constant pain of losing his arm kept him from falling asleep, so he couldn't be lured by the monster. I asked, "Did you find any useful clues in the diary you found yesterday?" I was just about to tell you. Maya had gone through all of old Mr. Blackwood's diaries and found a clue to the treasure on one of the pages. It was a poem. "My treasure lies beneath the sun. The black cat guards it for me. The nightingale sings for me. And the wicked little mouse shall die." Maya said, "Leo and I have already figured out where the treasure is. It's in the sunroom next to the mansion. The black cat is always there, napping in the sun, and a nightingale is always perched nearby. We also found the keyhole. It's under a flower pot. The only thing we're missing now is the key." Speaking of which, Maya sighed, "we can only search for the key in the mansion at night. The butler won't let us wander around during the day. But the mansion is incredibly dangerous at night. Without a rose, it's almost impossible to survive." Leo agreed. "And our dates are not easy to fool. It's hard to get a rose without giving up an arm or a leg. Even though a player's injuries would heal upon returning to the real world, in an S-class instance, losing a limb would cut your chances of survival in half." "I have roses," I said. Then I added, "a lot of them." "What?" 10 minutes later, both Leo and Maya had roses. I thought for a moment and decided to give roses to the veteran player who had stayed in his room and the new player who had survived yesterday. They hadn't helped me, but they also hadn't tried to harm me like Brutus had. As fellow humans, I still hoped they could make it out alive. Soon, it was evening. As we ate in the dining room, I could feel a low pressure emanating from Silas. The other players felt it even more acutely. They noticed Silas's gaze was filled with a hint of killing intent when he looked at them. I put a piece of beef on Silas's plate. Contrary to yesterday, today's uncontaminated food was the beef. I asked, "Silas, who made you angry?" "Why did you give the roses I gave you to other people?" His voice was dark. If you listened closely, you could even hear a hint of grievance. I lowered my eyes. "I'm sorry, they're my friends. When we get married, I hope they can come to our wedding." Silas cheered up a bit. "Alara, you're already thinking that far ahead?" I nodded gently. Silas didn't pursue the matter of the roses any further. For that meal, the players made it through safely with no one else getting hurt. At 10:05 p.m., Maya, Leo, and I met at the top of the stairs again. But this time, the veteran player who hadn't come yesterday, Ivan, and the new player, Faye, were with us. With roses in hand, their nighttime movements were no longer restricted. We split up. Ivan and Faye would search the first floor, while Maya, Leo, and I would continue searching the third. Maya gave Ivan a walkie-talkie. "We're looking for a key. If you find any useful clues, contact us." Ivan nodded. "No problem." We searched the third floor for a long time with no luck. Fortunately, we got good news from Ivan. He had found the key. We met up in Ivan's room. As soon as we entered, we saw something alive, writhing frantically inside a burlap sack. Maya asked, "The key you mentioned, it's not that, is it?" Ivan opened the sack, and a black cat was inside. It was old Mr. Blackwood's beloved pet, which often roamed the mansion. On the day we arrived, it had been perched on the roof, its dark green eyes staring coldly at us as it let out an unsettling cry. Ivan replied, "It's in its stomach." In his second game instance, Ivan had received the reward of X-ray vision. The ability allowed him to see if there was anything hidden under an animal's skin besides flesh and blood. It had a limited number of uses, only 3 per instance. So, after Maya told him about the clue she found, he had used the ability on the black cat. He didn't dare cut the cat open directly. In a previous instance, he had found a clue inside a rabbit's stomach, but it triggered a curse that almost killed him. He was afraid of triggering another curse. Leo spoke up. "I have a way." He had an item called the Weight Loss Miracle, which was a scented balm. No matter what a person ate, as long as they smelled the balm, they would throw everything up. For the past 2 days, he had been using it to vomit up the contaminated food he'd eaten, allowing him to stay sane. Faye was incredibly envious. That's a really useful item. Leo had the black cat smell the balm. A short while later, the cat started to vomit. First came fish jerky, then human fingers, then clumps of black hair. Finally, it threw up a small, ornate box. Luckily, the box wasn't locked. After a quick rinse with water, Leo opened it. Inside was a key carved with a single perfect rose. Leo looked pleased. Looks like we'll be able to clear this instance tomorrow. I returned to my room and smelled the familiar scent of winter cedarwood. Alara, I missed you. A fluffy head rested on my shoulder, arms wrapping tightly around my waist. On the surface, Silas seemed quite harmless. That is, if you ignored the strong, metallic smell of blood in the room. While I was gone, he had once again killed the monster hiding in my room, and this time, his methods were no longer gentle. I pretended not to know anything and ruffled his hair. I'm back. But you're going to leave again, aren't you? His voice was a bit muffled against my shoulder. He held my waist so tightly that our bodies were pressed together, making it a little hard to breathe. My voice grew even softer. We'll always meet again, won't we? Whisker. Silas looked up. You recognized me. I nodded. Your cedarwood scent is exactly the same as Whisker's. Whisker was a little monster I had raised. He had suddenly appeared at the bottom of our apartment building one day. According to my friends, his appearance was strange and inspired fear in anyone who saw him. Because he was injured and weak, he was often bullied by other kids. I felt sorry for him, so I adopted him. Since I couldn't see, his appearance couldn't scare me. Whisker was dark and furry and made little purring sounds that vibrated through my hands, so I named him Whisker. Most of the time, he was very well behaved, except when someone bullied me. Then he would become incredibly fierce, standing protectively in front of me, daring anyone to touch me. My stepsister had a run-in with him once, and now she's terrified of cats and dogs. He also didn't like other people getting close to me. I think he saw me as his one and only, and he wanted to be my one and only as well. Whisker was perfect in every way, except he was a little clingy and insisted on sleeping in my arms at night. We were practically inseparable. But just as suddenly as he had appeared one day, he disappeared. I looked for you for so long, I said softly, but I couldn't find you. I thought something had happened to you. I was so sad for a long time. Hearing this, Jasper's tone became heavy. Some audacious humans used a forbidden technique to forcefully summon me. He had originally planned to reveal his true form and stay by my side forever, but an accident happened, and he was forcibly returned to the horror world. You, my unfocused eyes instinctively looked down at the tentacles that were once again wrapping around my calves. A series of feather-light kisses fell on my neck, and I heard the man's cool voice in my ear. Alara, I'm so happy you've been thinking of me. A cold breath passed over my skin, but my body grew warm. We were so close that I quickly noticed the change in him. Remembering last night's lack of control, I felt a little scared and shrank back. Silas, I don't want to. I'm still not feeling well. Silas's movements paused. Let me see. Realizing what he was doing, I trembled slightly, a soft sound escaping my throat. Don't do that. I instinctively tried to push his head away, but my hands were caught by his nimble tentacles, immobilizing me. My back was pressed against the cold door as I passively accepted the pleasure he gave me. In the darkness, all I could hear was his soft chuckle. Alara, you're so sweet. The next morning, we gathered all the Blackwoods and told them we had a clue to the treasure. They were overjoyed. Really? If you can truly help us find the treasure, then you are our lucky stars. We wouldn't be opposed to taking you as our lifelong partners. Among all of them, only one person was unhappy, exuding a dark and gloomy aura. That person was Silas. The other Blackwoods didn't dare go near him. His fingers were tightly intertwined with mine, his voice gloomy. Alara, I can't bear to let you go. I stood on my tiptoes and kissed his forehead. It's okay. I'll come see you again soon. Okay. It's a promise. Silas's ears turned a faint red and his long eyelashes trembled. As the key turned in the lock, the entrance to a basement slowly creaked open. Inside the basement was everything old Mr. Blackwood had accumulated over the years: gold, jewelry, and antique paintings and calligraphy. Of course, there were also many monsters guarding it all. The players took care of them. When the Blackwoods saw the treasure, their eyes lit up, and their affection for the players soared to 80%. One by one, the players around me began to vanish as they cleared the game. The familiar electronic voice sounded in my head again. System notice: Silas's affection for you has reached 100%. Congratulations on successfully clearing the instance. Clearance reward: all-seeing eyes. As you have reached 100% affection, the system will grant you an additional reward: a shape-shifting cane. I didn't have time to say goodbye to Silas or even check the details of my rewards before the horror game sent me back to the real world. When I opened my eyes again, I found that I could see. My stepsister was standing right in front of me, her face a mask of utter terror. What? You actually made it out alive? I smiled faintly. That's right, I'm back.